folks, welcome back to such a lovely place, such a lovely face. Unfortunately for you folks, the lovely faces are all behind the camera tonight. Deal with it. It is what it is. HMW Sports Talk Live. We talk sports on this show Saturdays, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. You can always get us here delivering for you, the Houston sports fan, and we love doing it. It's been Manziel-centric tonight. We've been all over the Manzielics and countering the Manzielics conversations. I want to pick back up on Angelo's comments that he was making before we went to break, and then when we come out of that conversation, I think I'll go to Facebook and read a couple of comments, questions that were on Facebook for the panel tonight. But Angelo, kind of rehash your comment and explain it, and I'm going to tell you why I just disagree with that.
No, the thing is, I just think from Clowney, from his position, not his talent, but just a position point of view, I think drafting him as a person to pursue the quarterback versus actually drafting a quarterback, the repercussions of him succeeding or failing are just higher than a quarterback from a fan perspective if he does fail. And if he reaches the ceiling, that's great. But if he fails, I just think that the repercussions are going to be a little bit more severe within the fan base than they would be for any other player that's a quarterback out of the top three that we're speaking of. Bortles,
I just think the whole basis of that is fundamentally flawed, and I'll tell you why. It's fundamentally flawed because to a man, we all agree that the quarterback position is just the most important position. So any type of a failure at the quarterback position, when you're talking about a number one overall draft pick, nothing's going to trump that. Because you needed a quarterback, and in the top of the quarterback class was perceived as not no-brainer type quarterbacks, no Andrew Luck, and that's a consensus. I don't see any way that not taking one of those guys and going after a guy who's considered to be every 10 years, some people say 30-year type player, like a Jadeveon Clowney, I just don't think that you get more criticism, more PR damage, more negative press from taking that guy. Now there are going to be people who say, well, we needed a quarterback, and the Clowney people say, yeah, but we'll never know what those guys would have been. Of course, we'll be able to see what they did with other teams, and I would assume that Teddy Bridgewater and Blake Bortles would be having good careers somewhere, and Johnny Football will be out of football in 3-4 years after several DWIs. That's just my opinion. That maybe we'll get back into that a little bit more next week, because that's got a lot of legs to it in a lot of different areas. John, I don't know if you want to come in on that before we move on to the social media, but I just think it's fundamentally nothing trumps the quarterback position. And if you fail there, particularly in a year when people say you got to get a quarterback, I just think, how can anything trump that?
Well, the thing to me is you just bet, if you decide it's not going to be a quarterback with the number one pick, then you better have a plan for who the quarterback is.
Oh, no doubt about that.
So from that standpoint, I think it kind of all works. To me, it all kind of works together. And one thing, and you said this a couple times, Craig, and this is kind of, I think, the Texas curse in some sense, is having the number one pick. Because
good point.
People want the number one pick to be Peyton Manning. They want it to be Andrew Luck. They want it to be possibly Eli Manning.
Yeah, and it's not. It's Jadeveon Clowney this year.
But yeah, it's
that guy.
It's Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, you don't have a no-brainer number one. I think people are getting, well, the number one draft pick needs to be a guy that goes to the Hall of Fame. Man, look at the number one draft pick, Eric Fisher last year.
Yeah.
You're talking about a guy.
Take a starting position.
Yeah, I mean, Jake Long went number one to the Miami Dolphins a few years ago. Orlando Pace. Those guys are all offensive linemen, but they all went. Number one. So you don't have, the Peyton Manning, John Elway lock at the number one, greatest you're ever going to see.
It's so rare.
It's so rare.
Yeah.
So I think we get lost in this, number one draft pick. No, what you got to have is a guy at the top of the draft on the offensive, defensive side of the ball that's going to impact the game whatever way possible.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do. That guy's got to impact the game in the biggest way possible.
And the other thing about this is people have to keep in mind something very, very important in this argument. If the Texans draft Clowney Clowney doesn't have to be the guy for several years, 3-4 years down the road before Clowney would be the guy that you would say he needs to be the number one guy on his defense, because Watt is the guy on his defense, and he will be more of a support to that than the guy. A quarterback drafted is under a whole different type of polarizing microscope with this football team.
Which some people would say, you don't draft that guy at number one. And see, that's why I'm saying you can't get kind of caught up in this, what's the number one draft pick?
What guy, Clowney?
No, yeah, Clowney. Some people would say, well, if you're saying that Clowney has to be kind of a complimentary piece.
No, well, I'm not saying that he has to be. He just will be.
Right.
He's been drafted on the team with J.J. Watt. I mean, it's out of his hand. Let's move on to some of the social media stuff, because I definitely want to get these folks' comments in and questions for taking the time to participate with the post that we put on Facebook. This is coming from the Let's Talk Texans Facebook group page, and this one comes from Daniel Christina Centaurio. Looking at next year's schedule, how likely is it that the Texans will make the playoffs despite everything that happened this season? Angelo?
I think they need to hope for just 8-8. I haven't. Golly, the season's always going to change. You know, who might be projected to be a weak link in the schedule chain next year might be a playoff team. You just never know. So it's kind of hard. I think the Texans need to focus on trying to just get back to 500 before they make the playoffs.
All right. This is from Jamie Rodriguez, and Jamie, specifically for you, John, wanted to know what your honest take is on Johnny Football, on Johnny Manziel.
I think Johnny can play. I think that the offensive scheme has got to change to take into account that he's never taken a snap under center. And I think the offensive game plan has to be centered around what he is going to be able to do. But I do think Johnny can play. And I think we're getting wrapped up in this number one pick. He's number one on our draft board, but if you had a Marino, a Luck, Cam Newton, he wouldn't be number one. But those guys are no-brainer number one picks. So
I'll do you one better. If Ryan Mallett was in this draft, he'd be the highest-rated quarterback in this draft.
Well, because he's a pro-style guy that fits a pro-style system. If you got, if Chip Kelly and the Philadelphia Eagles at number one, would you not say Johnny Manziel would fit hand in glove?
Yeah.
So I think that's why I think
until he drives Chip Kelly crazy. Real quick, last question.
Almost did.
This was for you also, John. Ask John Harris, what does he think of the Texans' offensive line, and will the second-year guys pan out, or do we need new draftees at that position or try free agents?
Y'all sure you want to hear my thoughts on the offensive line?
Well, we got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, they've got to find a left guard. They've got to find a right tackle. I'm not the biggest fan of Brendan Williams, but I think Brendan Williams has got to be your guy at right tackle. And I don't think you fight for guard, but I think you draft. You draft guys. Keep in mind, the guys that got drafted and were in the system, this is going to be a different run game system.
Type of system.
Totally different system. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went after a couple of guys. I wouldn't be surprised if they went and drafted John Urschel, Penn State guard, last year. So Bill O'Brien knows him well.
And a lot of people talking about Quisenberry. I love Quisenberry, tough kid.
I think he fits.
But size-wise, he's not ideal fit. He was a better fit for the zone blocking scheme. But that said, I think Quisenberry finds a way to make the team because he's just a scrapper.
Yep.
Yeah, and he was drafted to really be a swing guy. All right, folks, that's where we at. You know what I mean? It's HMW Sports Talk Live. We definitely appreciate you folks, John. I got to say thank you as always,
man.
For taking time out on Saturdays, leaving the family, and coming and hang with us, man. We bless you. We want you to be blessed for that, brother.
Man, I appreciate being here. Thank you, man.
We appreciate it. Angelo, as always, man, for your support with HMW.
It's all good, man. I appreciate it.
Got to give it up for Alicia Stewart. She's behind the camera, taking care of business for Big Richard Walker. And my niece Carrie back in there somewhere doing her thing. How about that? We got the family up in here making it happen. All right, folks, HMW Sports Talk Live. We're going to jump on up out of here, and we'll see y'all next week right here.